Hello and welcome to this presentation about high-cost lending in South Carolina and the debt trap it creates for so many people in our state. My name is Susan Stahl, and I serve as the Program Director for Village Engage, a nonprofit in Greenville that works to engage members of the faith community in issues facing our neighbors.
And my name is Jessica Sharp, and I am the founder and CEO of Sharp Brain Consulting. And I have a good bit of experience in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And I spent a lot of time working to build a stronger community. We are so pleased that you are joining us to learn about predatory lending and how it harms so many people in our state.
You may be watching this session on your own, or perhaps you're with a group. At certain times during this session, Jessica and I will invite you to pause the video if you or your group would like to have some time for reflection or discussion. Before we get started, if you would like to begin your session by offering an opening prayer or a meditation, please go ahead and pause the video and do that now.
We have a big problem in South Carolina, and the financial distress caused by the pandemic has only made that problem even worse. As you drive around certain areas of your city or town, it is likely that you will pass some places of business like this. These organizations make high cost loans that are called payday loans, auto title loans, and consumer installment high interest loans. Payday lenders charge a fee for the loans that they make, and they can charge up to $15 for every $100 they lend. That doesn't sound like much, does it? The catch is that $15 fee is charged after only 2 weeks. So the annual percentage rate, the APR, is 391%. That is a 391% interest rate.
According to the Center for Responsible Lending, the average annual interest rate charged for payday loans nationally is 400%. And the average borrower is stuck in 10 loans a year. This map of the US shows that the average interest rate charged by payday lenders, and it shows the rates by state. You can see that in South Carolina, our average interest rate is 395%. These loans create a debt trap, and predatory lenders derive 75% of their revenues from people caught in 10 or more payday loans a year. Unlike a traditional bank or credit union, payday lenders often do not assess a borrower's ability to repay their loan, even though South Carolina law requires it. Traditional lenders like Bank of America or South Carolina Federal Credit Union evaluate your income and expenses to determine whether or not you can pay back a loan. Makes sense, doesn't it? But not these high cost lenders. They gain access to a borrower's checking account and automatically deduct their payments, which are timed to coincide with the borrower's paycheck every 2 weeks, whether the borrower has other expenses to pay or not. Auto title loans are secured by a person's car. These loans typically have a 1 to 2 year term, and they often carry an interest rate in the realm of 300%.
So let's think for a minute about a person who takes out a 2 year auto title loan for $2,000. So if you enter the basic data into a loan calculator, $2,000 for the loan amount, an interest rate of 300%, and a 2 year term, you can see that the borrower would pay about $500 a month. And during the 2 year term, will pay more than $10,000 in interest. So, a person who takes out an auto title loan of $2,000 for just 2 years will end up paying back $12,000. And if they don't make all of their payments, their car will be repossessed. Not surprisingly, a person who purchases a car for $2,000 probably is not going to be able to make to make the payments of $12,000 over the 2 years and will end up losing their car. In the state of South Carolina, that is a real problem. Because we are a rural state and most of our residents need to drive to get to work and to buy groceries or to get to medical appointments.
One woman in South Carolina had her car repossessed while she was grocery shopping with her family. She came out of the grocery store and her car was gone. The store's security footage showed her car being towed away. She said, "They took it with all my kids' belongings, like book bags. One of my boys was in the band. I have a daughter who's in dance. They took all the uniforms, materials, everything, schoolwork, book bags, everything was in it. We didn't get anything back." Not surprisingly, the pandemic has caused financial crisis for many families in our country and has driven even more people to high-cost lenders. This map, released by the Urban Institute, shows that nearly 25%, or 1/4 of all Americans, have a subprime credit score, meaning they will have a hard time being served by a traditional lender. So they may go to a high-cost lender for funding.
And we see a pattern of inequity here. The line graph on the right shows that the communities that are majority Black and majority Native American bear the brunt of these financial challenges, with nearly 50% of these folks having poor credit scores. And if you look specifically at South Carolina, we can see that in our state, nearly 33%, or 1/3 of our residents, have a subprime credit score. The darker the blue of a county, the more folks who have a poor credit score. In the county of Allendale, 62% of the population has a subprime credit score. Here again, we see that our communities of color unequally bear this burden because of historical inequities that have reduced the ability of people of color from accumulating wealth. So, why do people take out these high cost loans that are going to be nearly impossible to pay?
Well, to start with, high-cost lenders make it really easy to apply for the loans. Some even offer online applications. Walk-in branches are often located near under-resourced neighborhoods. Direct mail flyers are sent to residents in under-resourced neighborhoods. Some people receive emails and even text messages advertising these loans. High-cost lenders also advertise on the internet and Facebook, and even in some of the online video games that people play. And while the benefits of this easy to get money are advertised, borrowers often have no idea how much they are actually going to have to repay. So when someone is falling short of cash one month and they need to pay for utilities or groceries or medication, you can see how an easy to get loan would seem attractive. But these loans often suck people into a debt spiral that causes great harm. Lots of people in our state have 6, 7, 8, or more of these high-cost loans.
So, we have a video to share with you now where people around the state talk about the harm these lenders are doing and what we need to do about it.
There is a big industry that takes advantage of people in financial distress.
They can charge whatever rate they want.
You will see that there's a level of targeting that is happening in South Carolina.
They don't look at someone's ability to repay.
Predatory lenders extract wealth, extract income, extract resources out of these communities.
Millions of dollars leave our state every year to these predatory lenders.
It affects every segment of our society.
I grew up in Mississippi. I went to college, got a degree in social work, and then I joined the Air Force. I had 2 master's degrees, sociology and then special education. came here in 2002. And I was working at a boys' home, and then they had budget cuts. So I ended up losing my jobs. I didn't work for a few months. And then I had to move in with my sister. And we were living in the basement, which was nice. And we paid rent, and we got flooded. And after that, we weren't able to stay there just because it had ruined a lot of the basement. It would have to be repaired. So in that time, I didn't have a good rental history because they don't count when you live with your relatives. But during that time when I was unemployed, I'd gotten the loans to help pay my bills like car insurance and, just everyday expenses. With having a teenage son, it gets expensive. So that's the main reason that I got the loans. If you get one, they make it easy, and then they'll refer you to somebody else, and then, before you know it, you have 2 or 3. And you have to pay them every payday, not once a month.
Our financial system is set up in such a way that it requires you to have a certain structure of life in order to use traditional banks, traditional financial institutions. But by and large, you have an entire sector of our community that does not have a formal banking relationship. And because of that, when there is an emergency need, when there is a short-term need, they oftentimes turn to payday lenders and title loan companies to access emergency dollars.
One of the things that payday lenders, auto title lenders, and high-cost interest lenders don't look at is they don't look at someone's ability to repay.
If you were to travel throughout South Carolina and see where payday lenders and their retail outlets are located, you will see that there's a level of targeting that is happening in South Carolina. You will see them located in low-income communities, low-wealth communities, minority communities. And as a result, that wealth gap continues to widen. And payday lenders continue to exacerbate that gap and make it more difficult for communities of color to begin to amass the kind of wealth that will enable them to work with the traditional financial community.
The whole business of one person taking advantage of someone else's financial distress is as old as history. In the biblical times, it was called usury. In the 20th century, it was called loan sharking. And in the 21st century, it is called perfectly legal in states like South Carolina and about 30 other states across the country.
In 1982, they had deregulated interest rates in the state, which meant that for South Carolina, as long as a company files their maximum interest rate with the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs and posts it, they can charge whatever rate they want. If someone wants to charge 900% and they don't want to be hammered by the Department of Consumer Affairs or the Board of Financial Institutions, they just have to file 900%. So the sky is the limit, and that's why we often see contracts like with auto title lenders for 300% or 150 or 250%.
We are looking for legislation that caps interest rates at 36%.
It's been effective in those states at reducing the amount of predatory lending that goes on.
If you talk to folks of means who have a credit card and are not having problems paying their bills, they'll hear 36% and go, ooh, that's kind of high. And it is kind of high. But 36% was actually the rate that was adopted through the Military Lending Act which was what we decided was the highest rate we should be charging our military and their dependents, because we wanted to make sure that they were ready for combat and that they didn't have to worry about leaving home, that they were going to be in trouble or their family would be in trouble.
We believe that every citizen of South Carolina deserves the same protection as our military. The Center for Responsible Lending did some interesting research that showed that more than the majority of the people in South Carolina actually agree with capping the interest rate at 36%. But the most interesting thing was that those that did not agree because they felt 36% was too high. So overwhelmingly, South Carolinians want this legislation and they need it now.
There are some myths that have been allowed to persist that allow legislatures to rationalize the predatory lending industry. And one of those myths is that there's no one else to make these loans, and that if people don't get their loans from the predatory lenders, they'll fall into even more unsavory hands. That is not the case.
So there's a lot of ways that folks can find alternatives to payday lending. Q Institute and the Center for Responsible Lending have identified that 42%, 45% of the people that do go to payday lenders actually have access to credit card lines or other types of loans or lines of credit that they could utilize to meet the need without going to a predatory lender.
So we are creating a charity, a nonprofit organization, to raise money to put in the care of Community Works and Self-Help Credit Union to be a backstop or a source of support for loans that are made to people who have poor credit scores and wouldn't be able to qualify for loans under the usual requirements of banks.
Miss Iris came to us as a recommendation or a referral from one of our organizations, and she is about 70 years old. She was struggling on a fixed income, Social Security. She was bringing home about $750 a month. Well, she had gotten caught up in a payday loan as well as a predatory car loan. It started with the car loan, and unfortunately, her old car started to break down, and she went to a buy here, pay here type car place. And unfortunately, they took advantage of Mrs. Iris and ended up with a $14,000 loan on a car that was only worth $9,000 at an interest rate of like 67%. Her monthly payment was $420. And she quickly realized that she couldn't afford the car. So she started visiting a payday lender to help make that car payment. And it snowballed. After both of the loans, she was only left with about $30 a month to live on. And of course, no one can live on that. We were able to refinance her payday loan and get her into a car that she could afford, that she didn't overpay for. Her total monthly expenditures went from $600 and something a month to $242 a month.
After we became homeless, I knew about the IHM program. Michelle Lyons is the financial consultant, and she can do financial counseling. It's no charge, for the participants in the program. So it's kind of helped me like organize and very helpful. I had like 4 total payday loan, but I've actually paid all of them off but one now.
As we continue this conversation, it's going to be extremely important that we have an active citizenry, because it's all of us coming together on a common purpose is the way substantive transformative change happens.
The reality of it is all politics really are local. And so if we, at the local level, we who are in churches, we can bring about any policy change that's going to benefit South Carolina.
Any great movement, any great cause, any great transformative change that's happened in this country, the faith-based community has been the foundation.
One of the things that we're hoping to do is to re-encourage the faith community to re-engage in a practice of working with the poor, with the marginalized, with the immigrant, with those that society does not support, and seek to be a voice to try to change policies, but also to be there to support strategies that will enable the marginalized to come into the center. South Carolina can only be the state that we want it to be if we are active in bringing about the change that we seek. We have to be active in all levels of public life. We have to bring these issues to the attention of those in power. And I believe if we do that, change will happen.
Wow. We've got to get this rate cap legislation passed in our state. So many people like Sylvia and Iris are being harmed. But before we talk about what we can do to help, let's consider 5 questions. After each of these questions, we invite you to pause the video and have a brief discussion with your group, or if you're on your own, to reflect on the issue. The first question is as follows. Who do you think is being targeted for these easy to get high cost loans? Do you know anyone with a high cost loan?
If you look at a map of South Carolina that shows where payday and auto title lenders have their stores, you will find that they are clustered near communities of color. In addition to targeting communities of color, these lenders target families that are experiencing poverty or who are on the brink of experiencing poverty. Lots of these lenders have physical locations located next to places where people pay their bills. Many elderly and disabled people who are dependent on a fixed income also fall prey to high-cost lenders.
The second question. What do you think these people are using these loans for?
About 80% of people with these loans are employed or they receive Social Security. So they are working people or people who have worked and are now retired. But they are in jobs or were in jobs that are low wage where they have not been able to earn a living wage. So they are simply trying to keep their family housed and fed. When people turn to high-cost lenders, they are typically just trying to keep the lights on, pay their rent, or feed their children. Some people turn to these lenders when they have an unexpected expense or an event, like a child gets sick and they have to miss work, or there's a medical emergency that generates a big bill, or their car breaks down.
The third question, why are predatory lenders charging such high interest rates and fees?
These exorbitant interest rates and fees are being charged for one reason: to make money. Some people defend payday lenders, title loan companies, and the consumer finance industry and say that the high rates of interest and fees charged are necessary to cover high rates of delinquencies. However, if you look at the return on equity, or ROE, of various kinds of lending companies, you will see something different. A traditional lender like Bank of America or Wells Fargo posts an annual ROE in the range of 7 to 12%. In comparison, the parent company of the payday lender, Advance America, produces a nearly 25% return on equity. These high-cost lenders are hugely profitable, and they are making their profits at the expense of the most vulnerable people in our state.
The next question, do you think a person who has high-cost loans might suffer any health consequences or have their productivity at work impacted by the stress of the debt?
A study released in 2018 by the Institute of Policy showed that compared to non-borrowers, people with payday loans had 42% more negative physical health symptoms like headaches, insomnia, and loss of appetite. Payday loan borrowers also had higher rates of anxiety and higher rates of inflammation, which can elevate their risk of heart disease. In another study, interviewees described intense feelings of stress, depression, and emotional and physical suffering associated with paying high interest and with doing without other necessities. In a study done by Salary Finance, it was determined that workers with financial stress are 3 times more likely to experience anxiety and panic attacks, nearly 6 times more likely to miss deadlines, 5 times more likely to produce lower quality work, and 4 times more likely to suffer from depression. All of these outcomes have a negative impact on both the individuals suffering the symptoms and the bottom line of the companies they work for.
And our final question, does this issue simply impact the individual with the loans, or is our entire state being impacted?
When this high-cost debt causes people in our state to be forced out of their homes, or to have to skip meals, or avoid needed medical care, they are often forced to seek assistance from area nonprofits and government programs to fill the gap. One upstate nonprofit, United Ministries, testified at a legislative hearing in 2020 that a significant number of their clients seeking emergency services had at least one high-cost loan.
So at this point, I think we all have a pretty good idea of how these high-cost lenders are harming our state. So what can we do about it? So we're all taking the first step right now, and that's learning about this problem. And you can help spread the word and this video resource with your networks so that more people in our state can learn about this problem. The South Carolina Fair Lending Alliance has been formed to help get legislation passed that will cap interest rates in South Carolina at 36%.
Remember that US map that we looked at before the video? This map is the one that shows that the average payday loan interest rate in South Carolina is 395%. But this map also shows that there are 17 states and DC, which are shaded in blue, meaning that these states have enacted legislation that caps interest rates on payday loans in their states. That is what we want to do in South Carolina, cap interest rates at 36%.
The website for the South Carolina Fair Lending Alliance is capratesc.com. There is a lot of great information on this website. And the second step that we can all take is to enter our email address on the homepage of the website where it says, sign up to stay in the loop. This will get us added to the database of people who want to keep up to date on the progress of the legislation and how we can help to get it passed. North Carolina and Georgia have passed this rate cap. And as we saw in the video, the majority of people in South Carolina are in favor of such a rate cap. So now we need to encourage our state elected officials to get the legislation introduced and passed so that all of the people in South Carolina will have the same protection that our military personnel have.
In many states where this legislation has passed, the faith community has been part of the loud voice of advocacy. We are going to need our faith community to be engaged in South Carolina. The Catholic Diocese of South Carolina and the South Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church have both issued statements of support for a rate cap. Work is also underway to build up a community fund that will serve as an alternative source of financing for people facing a shortage in cash flow. We heard in the video about the Micah Fund started by members of one parish. For individuals or groups who want to help financially, a third step is to reach out to Community Works about the statewide fund they are building. Included with this video, we have provided an important set of resources. We've included the link to the South Carolina Fair Lending Alliance website. We've also included contact information for Community Works if you want to help provide funding for an alternative source of financing. There's a link to an excellent resource created by the South Carolina Appleseed Legal Justice Center that's called Easy In, Impossible Out, and it's a document that's all about predatory lending in our state. And there's also a link to another video called Let My People Go that chronicles the involvement of the faith community in kicking predatory lenders out of South Dakota.
We have also included some talking points and a link where you can find out who your state senators and representatives are. And finally, if you or someone you know has taken out a title loan, a payday loan, or a high interest consumer installment loan, we would like to hear your story. We have included a link to a survey that will be used to collect these stories. Our elected officials represent us. So let's start talking to them about the need to protect the most vulnerable in our state by capping interest rates at 36%. Thank you so much for being with us and for caring about all the citizens of our state. We invite you and your group to talk about your next steps and how you would like to be engaged. And we really, really believe we can do this.